Game over, man. Game over.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
So serious.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the In Session Film Podcast.
Oh, welcome to this podcast review for October 5th, 2025, and I'm Jada Duran.
And I'm Brendan Cassidy.
Hey, thanks for joining us, everybody, for a special episode as the great Daniel Day-Lewis has come out of retirement. He has a new film. We have seen it, and we are here to celebrate. And
Was
because
he retired? That's the question.
yeah, well, if you ask him, that is seemingly the case, but who knows?
It
Who
may have
knows with
just been a role.
DDL? He's an enigma,
Yeah.
but we love him nonetheless. And because we are here to celebrate the greatness of one Daniel Day-Lewis, we decided to go out and find a guest for this episode as well. So joining us is the great Megan Kearns. Megan, welcome back to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. I hope you're a DDL fan.
I am.
Yeah. Do you have a
I'm
favorite
excited to talk
DDL
about him.
performance?
Ooh. I mean, there's so many great ones. This is a personal fave, maybe not the best. I do have a soft spot for Last of the Mohicans.
Oh man,
That's a fair point. That's a fair
Yeah,
point.
I dig that one too.
It's
I
just
like it.
oh, okay, great. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so good. It's so
Has
good.
he
Yes.
ever given a mediocre performance?
No.
And why is the
That's
answer
why he's
no?
the GOAT, as they say. That's what the
He's
young
been in
kids say, I
mediocre
think.
movies, but he's never phoned it
Yes.
Yes.
He's always fully committed.
in. Mm-hmm.
Yes. That fully committed is certainly on his headstone when it's all said and done.
Yes.
Yes. And I don't know if you saw this because there was an interview recently where he was talking about the method, and I don't know what his tone of voice was because it was written down. This portion of the interview was anyway. Maybe there's a video out there for it. I don't know.
Mhm.
But he was talking about almost lamenting that it's become this cliched thing these days when, you know, and it's because there's been bad actors
Mm-hmm.
that, and I mean that in a literal sense in some cases.
Yeah, not just bad actors, bad
actors
actors.
that have taken the method and have really tarnished the reputation of it.
Yeah, they turned it into a bit of a punching bag.
Yes.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
they've done some not great things under said method and I love his words. I don't have them in front of me, but essentially he was saying all of that is horsewash. Like it's nonsense. Like it's
There's
just a way to craft your performance. That's all
Yeah,
that it is.
There's no right or wrong way. As long as it helps you, then that means it's
Yeah.
working for you. There's a great interview that Paul Thomas Anderson gave when he was on Jimmy Kimmel promoting Phantom Thread back in 2017, I guess that was, talking about Daniel Day-Lewis always staying in character, how he'll joke
Yeah.
in character, and things like that. And apparently Daniel Day-Lewis himself apparently has a really weird, quirky sense of humor. And that just
Yeah.
given your evidence there, JD, I can certainly see that.
Yeah, and we got a YouTube comment that I thought was really interesting because
Mm-hmm.
was this last week on the show, Brendan, or was it during our one battle after another review? I can't.
Oh, I
recall
think
which.
I know. I think it was during our top 5 Paul Thomas Anderson
It's
scenes
in
episode.
scenes.
Yeah,
That's
'cause
what
there-
it was because
yeah.
one of your scenes was from There Will Be Blood, and it
Mhm.
turns out that scene wasn't actually in the script. It was footage they filmed while they were off set, but because he stays in character and he's acting with the child actor there,
Yeah.
they decided to utilize that as part of the memory montage in the film.
Yeah, I think it was the
which-
film's editor that chose to insert that in. But
Yeah.
they had that extra footage of just Daniel Day-Lewis as Daniel Plainview off script playing with HW, and it actually adds a lot of nuance to the movie.
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah. Completely natural because they didn't even know they were being filmed. And it ended up being this awesome moment in the movie that all these years later we talked about on the podcast a few weeks ago.
I don't think a movie has
So-
ever gone from bastard in a basket to, oh, that's sweet.
Pretty remarkable. Anyway, that is to say, the method can absolutely be effective, can be great. DDL
For sure.
certainly quintessentially the example
Mhm.
there. Brendan, do you have a favorite DDL performance?
Oh, that's a great question. I will I will say which one I also have a soft spot for. Kind of like you were talking about there, Megan, with Last of the
Mhm.
Mohicans, but I don't think his best performance is The Crucible, but I do love that performance. And
Oh.
I think it's primarily because it was the first performance of his that I really saw and kind of absorbed. I think we had to watch that film in high school English class or something like that. And even then, I had no idea who this man was. I was like, who the heck is this guy? He is selling it. So I always have a soft spot for that performance, even though admittedly I might go with a very basic answer and say there will be blood. But I do have a
Yeah.
soft spot for The Crucible as well.
Yeah. There Will Be Blood is always going to be one of those impeccable pedestal type of performances. Phantom Thread might be my favorite, if I'm being
That's so
honest.
good.
It's a very
This,
nuanced performance. There's a lot of
Mhm.
subtlety in that
yeah,
one. Yeah.
I love the tonal swings of that performance. It gets quite enthralling psychologically in places, but it's also hysterical. He's
Yeah.
very funny in that role as well.
Mhm.
And we don't always associate him with humor in that way, but man, he nails it. It's so good. Absolutely love it.
I agree. I agree.
Mhm. Me
So
too.
Phantom Thread, speaking of, that was the last time we saw him back in 2017. So it had been
Yeah.
8 years. He was quote unquote retired and might remain retired. However, he is back in 2025 in a film that is co-written and directed by his son. And
Yeah.
there is something quite moving, I guess,
Kind of
about
meta
him maybe
about that.
coming out of
Yes.
retirement. And hilariously, if this ends up being the coda of his career and this is all we get from him post Phantom Thread, it will only become more sweet, I guess, in the long run that he came out of retirement because he wanted to do a movie with his son. How awesome is that?
Mhm.
I'm a
And
sentimental
Very
person. I
touching.
love that.
and given the subject matter of this movie, it also kind of makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. All right. We are here to talk about Anemone. I think that's how it's pronounced.
I brought
Absolutely.
I brought up the Finding Nemo reference offline, and now all we're gonna do is say it that way for the
Yeah,
rest of the
I
session.
will never get it correct because that's all I think about now.
Sorry. I take the blame for that one. My bad.
I know. I'm gonna have to pull up like the Google pronunciation so I can distinguish between
Anemone.
between how it's
Anemone.
actually pronounced
Anemone.
and Finding
Anemone.
Nemo. Because I'm with you. In my mind, it's just little fish talking.
You live
Anemone.
in what kind of home?
So yeah, we're here to talk about Anemone,
There you go. Good
directed
job.
by Ronan Day-Lewis, co-written by Ronan Day-Lewis and Daniel Day-Lewis. It stars, you're not going to believe this, Daniel Day-Lewis.
I thought he was retired.
I know. Turns out he's not. Surprise. What a cameo performance here. Sean Bean is also in this. The great Samantha Morton is in the film.
Yeah.
Samuel Bottomley and a few others that come and go throughout the film. If you're not familiar with this one, in northern England, a man heads out on a journey into the woods to reconnect with the estranged hermit brother with whom he shared a complicated past that was altered by life-changing events decades ago. All right, let's jump into this one. Megan, what did you think about Anemone?
So this has I have varied feelings on this and varied opinions because this has some incredible, stunning cinematography. It's absolutely gorgeous right from the start. The way it captures nature and the trees moving and the leaves, and we get lots of beautiful shots of sunsets and the ocean, and even the hailstorm is gorgeous.
Mhm.
And that's all very intoxicating, and there's a rhythm to it that's very enticing. And the score is very, despite being discordant in places, it's very seductive as well. And you have Daniel Day-Lewis, who's giving yet another fantastic performance. And Sean Bean is great. Samantha Morton is great, as both of them always are. Actually, all three of them always are.
Mm-hmm.
And this is dealing with incredibly complicated, intense, traumatic situations as far as shame about military actions, about death, about abuse, about religiosity. And there's just so much here that's happening. And a lot of the film, I felt I should be feeling something. I should be feeling real intense emotions. And at times I did, but most of the time I felt kind of distanced from what was happening. And it was
Okay.
kind of strange. And so much so that I feel like I need to watch it again to see if I would feel differently. And partly because when I didn't read anything about this going in, other than I knew who made it, who was in it, but I kind of wanted to go in not knowing anything. And so when I started watching, I was like, okay, how are these people related other than Sean Bean and Daniel Day-Lewis are brothers?
Yeah.
And I will say something that was very interesting about my experience watching this. There were no screenings near me for this, so I saw this in the theaters and with a regular audience. And about 30 minutes into the film, when Daniel Day-Lewis gives his very graphic speech about what he does to his abuser, half the people walked out, which I was like, wow.
I'm surprised they made it 30 minutes.
and that's the moment they left, because I'm
That's
like,
the
wow, that's
moment.
like, I'm locked in.
I
to this
know, me
monologue.
too. Me too. I was riveted. And they didn't like wait to find out what happened. No, they left before, like while it was happening. I'm like, what is going on?
That's disrespect to DDL.
Absolutely. How dare they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
I'm more or less with you on this movie, Megan. The thing though, and I think it mostly just comes down to timing for me, as to why in the end I still mostly dug this thing. I'm still mostly positive on it. It's a very well directed film at times. It's also arguably a very over directed film, and I think that might be the biggest issue with it. But when I talk about timing and why that timing is why I ultimately kind of dug this thing, I think maybe 10 years ago or so, I would have been much harder on a film like this. But we're in a day and age now where when we see a filmmaker really try something, I'm really intrigued by that. And as over-directed and ambitious as this movie is, Ronan Day-Lewis is trying for things. He's desperate to do something intriguing here. And at times the movie is stunning for all the reasons that you talked about and very well performed. And of course he has arguably the greatest living actor of all time at his fingertips. So he's given this gift to at least bring something compelling regardless of how the movie ends up being. And I'm kind of curious to see how this movie could have ended up if it weren't for Daniel Day-Lewis's performance. I do think he is terrific here. There are just a few facts of life, like grass is green, the sky is blue, DDL is good at his job. Like that's just something that the world has accepted at this point. But I did really find myself intrigued by Ronan Day-Lewis's direction, because it's just so rare nowadays, given the commodification of Hollywood and commercial blockbusters as well, and how they're all over the place, and they're missing that artistry that we tend to love in movies. I find myself pleased to see something that maybe doesn't really work, but it fails in interesting ways, and that makes it more of a forgiving experience for me. And I really appreciated that. So I was kind of enamored by this thing, even at times if I was maybe a little bit distant with some of the emotional choices, some of the storytelling choices it was making. I at least had something to look forward to on the filmmaking side, because there was always some surprise there that Ronan had up his sleeve.
Longtime listeners of the show will find this to be not surprising in any way, shape, or form, but I loved This
Oh,
movie.
loved. You're going with the L
I
word.
Oh
I like
wow!
loved it. Absolutely a
Yay.
JD movie through and through. I am a big believer in methodical cinema. I get that it's not for everyone, but anytime a film wants to be patient, to linger on what's unsaid and the power of that performatively, I am totally there. And that is where this film thrives, especially when the one driving all of that is Daniel Day freaking Lewis. Daniel Day-Lewis. He's out of retirement. I think we mentioned that.
it. I had no idea.
DDL, he's back. He is tremendous. I know that's a hot take, but I think he is tremendous. There are times when he's fiery, a word I use purposefully here because of the film's symbolism and use of fire as an aesthetic tool. But mostly it's an internalized performance where Ray's emotional volatility erupts in DDL's mannerisms and his facial tics, not so much in his dialogue. Same thing can be said for Sean Bean as well, who I think is excellent in an understated performance.
Sure.
It's incredible
Yes.
how they're able to demonstrate a credence as it relates to their brotherhood, but also a vivid distance, as we noted in the synopsis. They haven't been close for a really long time. Again, it's striking how that duality almost exclusively operates in the film's methodical, introspective underbelly. Oh, and also, you're not going to believe this, but Samantha Morton is phenomenal in a limited role here. Her role is rooted in more verbal dialogue comparatively to being in DDL, but my God, does she absolutely deliver. There's a scene near the end of the film when she's talking to her son about Ray, and the way she reminisces in love and regret and heartache and anger, it is nothing short of sublime.
Sure.
As for Ronan Day-Lewis's direction, huge fan. I'm a huge fan of what he does here. The filmmaking is experimental, but it's always cogent. There's always clarity to the storytelling and why these characters act the way they do, despite some of the choices that he makes as a director. I don't think the film takes unnecessary risk. There are some bold choices here, particularly near the end, but mostly I think his choices are assiduous and resourceful. I'd say more than anything, he's asking for patience, given the methodical nature of the film. And in the middle of that is maybe the most gorgeous cinematography of the year. The imagery here is stunning. Every
It's very
frame
painterly.
is out of
Yes.
a painting. Absolutely. And it's not always just for aesthetic purposes. There are some great there's some great visual symbolism going on here as well. Perhaps a little bit on the nose at times. If I had to criticize Ronan Day-Lewis, he does lean into sentiment with some of that symbolism.
Yeah.
I don't mind that myself.
It's passionate though. Like you could
it's
tell
passionate.
and that sincerity goes a long way.
I agree. So I think when you couple that emotionality, even if it's on the nose, with how assiduous and careful he is with all the other choices that he makes, I think it makes for an incredible directorial debut. I do get why this isn't for everybody. It is a film that requires you to actively take part in this. And some people are not willing to do that. They're going to walk out 30 minutes in when Ray starts talking about doing some awful things to some awful people. But again, I am totally here for introspection. I'm totally here for being patient and letting the artistry do some magical work. Long live methodical cinema. I'm here for it.
I was like, I'm here. I agree with everything you're saying, JD, as far as the patience required. And I love films that take their time and that unfold slowly. And I think that's one of the beauties about this film. I wish I had as much love for it. I need to grapple with it. What is it about this that
Yeah, I
I had a barrier to?
I do wonder if I might speak to that a little bit because there's a lot of mystery around what caused Ray to isolate himself. And sometimes I feel like the film and maybe Ronan's direction thinks the mystery is more interesting than the outcome, and kind of treats it maybe
Ooh.
like a bit of a reveal, like we're waiting for some shoe to drop. And when that shoe does drop, it's not the most extravagant of explanations, which I actually kind of like about the movie. It's
I love
actually,
that it's simple. The film
yeah.
is way more simple than it initially lets on.
Yes,
I
very
guess I
true.
would have liked a little bit more tonal simplicity maybe leading up to that, and maybe that's my biggest criticism of it, 'cause there's this bigness to it that acts like such a facade that it might even feel like too much of a facade, but I do love the methodical approach that you're talking about, JD. I think that's one of the best attributes of the film.
Mhm.
The reconnection scene early on between Ray and Jem, played by Daniel Day-Lewis and Sean Bean respectively, it's a good like 7 to 10 minutes of them just sitting in a room. They don't even talk to each other.
Yeah.
And all that's playing is this needle drop, which again is an obvious one, but might be one of the best needle drops of the year, just given my love of this song and this band. But they're playing Solitude from Black Sabbath. And it fits the mold perfectly for just the overall vibe. And in that moment, I thought to myself, I think I'm gonna like quite a few chunks of this movie, just given some of those tonal choices. But it does a great job setting us up for what this movie is going to be. And for the most part, there are many individual scenes that emphasize that importance that I do think are very good.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love a lot of that opening that set up the mystery box, if you will, especially because as I unpack this in hindsight, again, I don't think that Ronan Day-Lewis is really doing all that much narratively to hide where this is going. There's certainly some interesting filmmaking choices that he's making, but again, I love that he's willing to play with the camera and do something interesting visually.
Yeah.
But mostly what we see are two characters, two brothers that haven't seen each other for decades. Of course, there's going to be conflict the moment that Jim walks into the door and he hasn't seen his brother in God knows how many years. So it's going to take some time for that relationship to kind of resolve itself to a point where they can talk about why they're having this meeting to begin with.
Yeah.
And you couple that with this letter that is involved and how Samantha Morton's character of Nessa, how that's in play here. She doesn't have as much screen time, but her role, the character of Nessa, is quite vital to how this story plays out in a lot of ways. And I do love how Ronan Day-Lewis is constantly interjecting that into the story to remind the audience of that importance, while of course emphasizing the daily routine of Ray and how Jem is now involved in all of this in midst of their conversations. And it bubbles emotionally. There's not a lot of over emotion here until we get to the end. Even as emotionally impactful as Ray's story about his abuser really is, the film itself doesn't play it in this over sentimental way. If
It's actually kind of
anything,
funny.
it's kind of
Yes.
funny. There's a bit of catharsis for Ray for sure.
Mhm.
And I do love how that plays out. Again, like I don't know why of all the times that you could have walked out of this movie, that's the moment. That is when the film gets the most gripping. Like that's when it
I
really begins.
know. I know he's so filled with fury. Like, why would
Yeah.
you want to turn away from that? But
It's such a compelling one.
I agree. I think it's because of the subject matter. I think I
Yeah,
don't
and
know.
that's
I don't know what
understandable.
movie
Yeah.
people thought they were going into, but I don't
Yeah.
think it was that one. But yeah. But JD, I just want to say I'm so glad you brought up the inclusion and the scenes cutting to Nessa, because Brian and Nessa weren't even in the script at first. It was just going to be Ray and Jem, and I love that they were added, and so that fleshes out their
That's
characters.
interesting.
in
I
that
didn't know
story.
that. That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's part of the fun for me as well because I didn't really watch the trailer. I don't know if they are in the trailer. All that I knew, or at least what I thought I knew, was that it was going to be this movie about these two brothers, estranged, haven't seen each other in a long time, and they have this moment together in the woods. That's what I thought I was walking
okay.
into.
I don't mean to cut in, JD, but so you haven't seen the trailer at all?
I have
you
not, no.
I haven't either.
Okay, both of you should go back and rewatch that trailer or watch that trailer for the first time, given the movie that we actually got, because that trailer makes this movie look like it's going to be Hereditary.
Oh,
I'm not even kidding. I thought, oh, wow, is this a horror movie?
Wow.
Wow, that totally blinds. That is not at all the film I expected you to say.
No. Maybe that's why people were walking out.
Yeah,
they weren't getting Hereditary.
I can see. Yeah, because this is
I
not
can actually see
Hereditary.
that.
Like not even
Yeah.
close.
I do feel like that trailer I saw did seem to
Yeah.
suggest that this would be horror adjacent in a way, at the
Okay.
very least. And there are definitely some sequences here where I could see a filmmaker like Ronan Day-Lewis tapping into the horror genre. I think he does things here that definitely fit
Yeah.
that genre very well. And there are a few sequences here that are pretty tense that could be similar to what you might find in a more artful horror film, but at its core, it's not a horror movie by definition.
Well, and
No.
again, maybe that's also what I love about Ronan Day-Lewis's tonal precision here, because the score, to your point earlier, Megan, I do think is really great, adds
Mhm.
a nice aesthetic component here. But I guess to your point, Brendan, there are images here that would play well as a horror film if you removed the score that is there and you inserted something that's more in the horror realm from a score perspective. It probably would play quite rigorously as a horror film.
Yeah.
But those tonal choices that he makes certainly veers quite in a different direction than Hereditary.
No,
that was not at all the film I was expecting you to say.
It's a surreal domestic drama is what this movie is.
Yeah.
And when and the way it taps into many of its themes, such as grief, regret, it certainly felt because of how great Daniel Day-Lewis is. He has a few monologues here that you certainly sense that.
Well, and I guess to finish off that point about the surprise factor for me, because again, all I knew, or at least what I thought I knew, was it was about those two brothers in the woods with perhaps some, artistic flourishes from a directorial perspective. I had seen some screenshots and some GIFs that certainly reflected that. So that's what I thought I was getting here. And it's really not that at all. If anything, this is really more of a movie about fathers and sons, mothers and sons. That's what this film is really about. So I was taken aback by that. I had no idea that's where this film was veering. So the way that it exploits the grief and the trauma of Ray and how he's been harboring all of this for decades, and ultimately we do get an answer to it. Again, as much as this film presents itself as this ambiguous art house film, and it might play itself that way at times, especially from an aesthetic perspective, I do think there's a lot of cogency here to the storytelling. And I was really quite surprised with how the film ends, given a lot of the emotional heft that Ray is grappling with here in terms of that deep, deep guilt and trauma that he's been carrying all these years. But it ends in a way that is mournful, but it's got this weird tenderness to it. Like it ends almost in this hopeful way that is ambiguous. We don't know how things are going to play out, especially given scenes we had seen with Brian earlier in the film. But it does leave you in this space that is less melancholic and a little bit hopeful. And I do think the film earns its place in how it arrives there, given a lot of the catharsis we do see in Ray, that the conversations, the monologues he has with Jem. I love all of that, especially when you funnel it through that methodical prism we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
I was like, I know, I'm taking it all in. I'm thinking because yeah, no, but I think you're right. I think part of me, and this is part of my own personal issues, but I think I find Ray to be such a captivating character in large part because of Daniel Day-Lewis, of course. And
Yeah.
he's very complex and you feel for him. But I also love that we get the other side with Brian and he's like, no, he's a coward. He's like,
Yeah.
he ran away. He abandoned us. And I love that the film doesn't make excuses for Ray.
Yeah.
But it also understands his perspective.
Yeah.
We understand why he feels this shame, why
Yeah.
he's experiencing this tremendous guilt and trauma and all of this, and why he would have to sequester himself and
Sure.
and go into seclusion. But it never lets him off the hook. And through his interactions with Jem, as well as Brian's interactions, talking with his mom about this, and I love that. I love that we get the multiple perspectives on that.
Every
Yeah.
character here is pretty complex. They have their own points of view, even though this is advertised as a Daniel Day-Lewis vehicle, and it mostly is. He's not the only complex character here. Everyone has a unique perspective given Ray's actions and how they choose to respond to that, which I think
Mhm.
is very effective. I couldn't help but think of this other movie to compare it to. I don't know if this has been acknowledged yet, so I don't know if I can take credit for this, but given that this movie is titled after some type of plant, deals with themes on grief and regret and how it doesn't let any character really off the hook by the end, and also ends in a weird natural occurrence. This is basically a 4-person version of Magnolia. That's basically
you were
what
gonna
this
say
movie.
that.
That's exactly what this movie is. It's as if Ronan Day-Lewis said,
Yeah.
"I'm remaking Magnolia, but with only 4 characters." That's kind of what this movie is, and I mean, granted, it doesn't feel like Magnolia.
It's a
It has
very different experience
it's
aesthetically.
a very
yeah.
different energy. I mean, if anything, these are really more superficial comparisons, and I'm willing to
Yeah.
acknowledge that. But there are some pretty striking similarities between the two, I must say.
Yeah.
But I do think they're both effective at their respective things in different ways. But I do think, for the most part, this one is still very effective at some of those similar thematic ideas, just in a much more domesticated way.
Yeah, and again, I do love, as obvious as the symbolism is, and you brought up that this is named after a flower,
Yeah.
which in Greek mythology, it's a symbol of grief and love lost and the fragility of life, which through the years has become this cultural symbolism for mourning and anticipation, protection against evil. And that is absolutely a big part of this film. In fact, Ronan doesn't really hide from that at all. He leans into that symbolism again quite brazenly, which I don't mind because of the passion in the filmmaking. But I do love how that plays itself into all of these characters in these various ways. And we do get various perspectives along the way. And I also love how that tailors itself to the Irish backdrop of this film, which we haven't really mentioned all that much. But a lot of the trauma that Ray is harboring is born out of the Irish troubles. What's interesting, though, is I feel like a lot of the films that we get that tackle that subject matter is more so about the other side of the aisle, I guess. This might be a slight spoiler, but what we do find out is that Ray was an IMF soldier.
Yeah.
So he was the one attacking a lot of the people that normally, though, that's the perspective we get in films.
Yeah.
It's the other side of that coin. So like for him to be an IMF soldier, to do things that he is not all that proud of. And again, eventually we do get an answer to all of this. Ronan does not hide away from the secrets of this movie. There is a slow emotional build to it. And when that eruption does come, of course, Daniel Day-Lewis, being Daniel Day-Lewis, is able to deliver that monologue.
He just acts
in
the
this
hell out of it.
enthralling way. It is unbelievable, that moment. And it gives a lot of credence to the choices that he makes. But to your point earlier, Megan, it doesn't excuse him as a father figure and how he was never really there for Brian or Nessa in the aftermath of it all. The film does not make excuses for him. And I think that's what I love so much about Nessa in that moment. As I mentioned in my opening thoughts, when she's talking to Brian about Ray, something that she admits to Brian in the moment. I've never talked to you about your father. I don't know how.
Yeah.
And so in the moment, she's experiencing love and regret and heartache and anger because she also acknowledges that he did walk out on them. So there's a lot of complicated feelings. And from Brian's perspective, it's maybe a little bit more black and white. But again, I think that's what I love about the central conflict here, why Jem is trying to get Ray to come back in the first place, because Brian is having some issues of his own. And where it ends, it is a bit ambiguous, but again, going back to that central metaphor of the flower and what that represents, the film does not hide from it. And it leans into it in this surprisingly hopeful way that you don't always get in movies like this. And then I did appreciate that.
One of the things I really do enjoy and appreciate about this is that there are these really big moments, but there are so many very small moments that reveal so much about the characters. Like even right from the start, when Jem goes to Ray's house and he immediately grabs his axe because he's ready for battle. He's like,
ready,
who's
ready
at
to go
my
to war.
door? Right, exactly. And the camera's focused on the tight grip on the handle. And as soon as he hears Jem's specific clicking, they're like code, he immediately relaxes. And it's those small touches that I think are great. But then you also have those, as we've been talking about, like the painterly surreal moments that you have where Ray is like inside the photograph of Nessa with like her hair all in front of her face, almost like it's like seaweed. And then you also have that really strange mystical creature.
That's the one thing I don't know if I can explain just yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
I kind of like that about it, though.
Yes.
I mean, I
Go
like
ahead,
my interpretation of it, and I'm not sure how to walk through this without spoilers, but I think a lot of it for me circles back to the story that he tells Jem about what happened to him and why he decided to walk out. And because I think the film leads up to this, visually speaking, and again, this is what I love about the bold choices that he makes, because before we even get to that moment when Ray tells Jem that story, we simply get these establishing shots of, let's say, body parts hanging from trees or lying on the ground. And when we first see them, it just seems like surreal imagery. We don't know what any of it means until we get to the moment with Ray when he tells the story, and then all of a sudden it's put into context. So I do think the mystical element is another embodiment of that story. And again, trying to, in this very strange way, bring closure to Ray, because right after that is the moment he decides to go back to Brian. So it's as if this other individual that's a big part of his story, as disembodied as it appears to be, it seems to be at peace. So that's my initial interpretation of it, or at least that's what I was thinking walking out of the theater. And given the choices that he makes in the immediate aftermath, that's what I was thinking. But I also just saw this yesterday as we were recording. And Megan just walked out of the theater.
I did.
So you're really fresh on it.
I am.
So this could evolve as time goes. That's just my first view of it.
Yeah.
No, but that makes sense. That makes thematic sense. It makes narrative sense. So yeah, I think you're onto something with that. I think
Yeah, and it definitely has something to say about nature and how that plays a part in this too, because there is
Yes.
something about
Yeah,
this
yeah,
this
yeah.
specific creature that we're referring to and trying to say and talk about very vaguely, so we don't give too much away. There's almost like this cylindrical kind of design with it,
Yeah.
as if nature is feeding it and it's also feeding nature. Like it's almost like
Mm.
it almost seems to have
Yes.
like this it almost looks like this like the serpent eating its own tail kind of thing.
Which I
Yes.
think is important. That's an
Yeah.
interesting observation because this film, in many ways, is also about generational trauma, not
Yeah.
just Ray's own personal trauma. Because one of
Yes.
the more important sequences of the film, we talked about Ray's abuser and how he enacts some sort of revenge
Mhm.
or catharsis of his own, but he also talks about his own father.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mentions how his father was an asshole, for the lack of a better term,
Yeah.
and then Ray's own issues as well. And then you go back to Brian. The reason Brian is in trouble is because of violence he harbored onto someone else. He nearly killed
Yeah.
another kid. So this film is about generational trauma and violence and kind of that, to your point, Brennan, as far as this cycle, this endless
Yeah,
cycle that goes
cylindrical.
back and
Yeah.
forth. Yeah.
You know what's something interesting too, bringing it back to the whole imagery of the flower and the fact that it's named Anemone and all of that, and Ray is tending to those flowers so delicately, so carefully. It is really such a contrast with the kind of toxic masculinity of violence and this, as you're saying, generational trauma and the abuse that Ray has endured and that Jem endured
Mhm.
too. And he's just handling it very differently and reacting very differently. But it is such a contrast, such a juxtaposition to
Yeah.
have the hit Ray come from those worlds, come from those very hyper aggressive, hyper violent worlds, and then to seek refuge in nature in such a healing way and to be tending to these delicate creations. And there really is an aching beauty to
Yeah.
that.
Only
And some
for
interesting, sorry to cut in
Yeah,
real
yeah, yeah.
fast, Brendan, but some interesting irony as well. The film doesn't necessarily portray this as much, but the one thing about nature is that it is also endlessly violent.
Oh, that's what I was just gonna
That
say.
is
That's
true.
exactly what I was just gonna say, JD. So you stole my thunder there. Is
Sorry,
that
I didn't.
no,
I,
no, no,
I didn't
no.
know where I would have let you go.
This is once again JD and I. This is once again JD and I having the same brain.
Yeah.
My
You're
thought process.
psychically linked.
We kind of
I
are. We
know.
kind of are. I was literally going to go in that exact same way and verbalize how, unless nature comes along and violently destroys what you've created, that there is yet another cyclical nature to all of this, which is
Yes.
exactly what we see without
Yeah.
getting spoilers.
yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So, and like, again, I just love how that's what we see. And then in the aftermath is Ray making that choice at the end of the movie that he does.
Yeah.
Which doesn't necessarily lead to anything profound as far as what is going to happen next. We have no idea.
no,
What
but
is
we
going to
know
happen
he's
next.
he's completed an arc where he's at
Yes.
least
Yes.
willing to make the attempt.
He's willing to make
Yes.
the attempt. Absolutely. So just finding any sort of healing
Yeah.
in through that process at all is a miracle, especially given what we had seen at the beginning of the film.
Right.
So
Yes.
and again, I think that's what I love about the surrealistic filmmaking here at times is that it does kind of tap into this almost transcendent experience that Ray goes through, because it is
Mhm.
very difficult to get to that place that he does at the end of the film.
Mhm.
But to suggest the idea that it's even possible, again, I love that tonal swing.
Mhm.
I love
Yeah.
it.
It's a fascinating movie.
Yeah.
Yes, so much to unpack. And Ray really does go on kind of an epic quest on a very small scale physically, but very much in a large epic scale emotionally. And it is quite profound, no matter what happens, no matter what comes next.
Yeah.
Yeah. One element as well that I really love here is simply the Ray and Jem dynamic and how that evolves over the course of the film. Of course, there's that immediate conflict at the beginning,
Mhm.
but again, what's so striking to me about this film are the aspects of it that I think are quite profound, but it's all cycled through the things that are unsaid.
Yeah.
So what I love specifically about that dynamic are these moments such as them, goofing around eating blueberries and Ray just gets it all over his face.
I love the way they drink in this movie.
Or the way they drink. Like that whole sequence is hilarious. And they go on this little dancing.
Yes, I was going to say the
rampage.
dancing. The way they dance is so silly together.
So
It's-
wonky.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. And again, I go back to, I guess, on the other side of that tonally, before we get to the big story at the end of the film that Ray gives, there is a moment earlier when Jim asks him, what happened? And he doesn't know what to say. You just get this close up. It starts off as a close up, and then the camera zooms out and we get more of a wide shot by the end of it. But DDL doesn't say anything. But his quiet stoicness there in that moment, I think, says a lot, given how the film led to that moment. Or I think what's also interesting is that there's a lot of ambiguity as to whether Ray is going to leave or not. And there could, like, there throughout all of this, Jem could have just left. I gave you the letter. You know why I'm here, but he doesn't leave. Why? Again, the film doesn't necessarily spell that element out, but in the unsaid, there's a lot of, like, the film does give us those reasons why Jem doesn't leave.
Yeah, and there's enough in Sean Bean's performance that if he were to leave, my reaction at least would be that just seems out of character for someone like Jem.
Right.
Absolutely. He wants to reach Ray on a deeper level, and obviously, ultimately, the goal is to get him to come back with him. So there is a logistical, pragmatic reason that he doesn't leave, but there's also an emotional one. And
he's
again,
an empathetic character, and you can sense that.
And I also love that moment when he asked him. This is at the campfire near the end, where he's like, "How did you do it?" And Ray's like, "What do you mean? Like, how did I do all of this on my own without you?" And again, like, that's all he says. The film doesn't give us any sort of explicit reason as to how he was able to do all of this alone by himself. But there's, like, the film gives us enough clues that the fact that they're together, there was something cathartic about that as well. Just them seeing each other and being able to bond and have this experience, even though they themselves wouldn't have articulated that way. But that's ultimately what happens. And I think it's a big reason why Ray also makes the choice that he does at the end of the film, that Jim would come out and just spend that time with him. Ray probably was looking for companionship on some level. On some level. And I think that comes through, again, quite subtly, but powerfully in Daniel Day-Lewis's performance. And that's just what makes him the greatest.
Well, I mean, he's good at his job, right? I mean, I don't know if we made that clear.
Yeah. Turns out he's very good.
I think what's great about this performance, though, is that we have seen Daniel Day-Lewis in so many different characters, different facets, where he's able to harness rage or restraint. Like, I think of Age of Innocence, how much restraint that character has, or so much, rage and manipulation and abuse, like in Gangs of New York or with There Will Be Blood. And yet here, I feel like all of it is coming together, and like Phantom Thread and his humor, all of this is being distilled. He's harnessing all of it to come through in this one character to show all of those facets.
Kind of a DDL buffet.
Yeah, I was just about to say the same thing.
Yeah. Get out of my head, JD. But like,
it is a buffet.
It is, and I think that's why. I know he talked about retiring after Phantom Thread, and in a way that does feel like a very big way to end your career, working with a great director like Paul Thomas Anderson for the second time. But in the case of Anemone, if this ends up being his final performance now, it kind of feels like a coda in a way, like kind of like
Yes.
an epilogue of sorts to his entire career. And I almost feel like this might be a more appropriate way to tie a bow over his entire acting career.
Yeah.
So
Which is
I like that.
exactly how I felt about Miyazaki. Because
With
like
The Boy and the Heron.
Boy in the Heron.
yeah, exactly. Because I thought The Wind Rises was the perfect ending for him.
Yeah.
I always was like, yep, walking out with the most Hayao Miyazaki thing you could possibly do. And then he comes out with The Boy and the Heron, and it's like, okay, as far as a coda goes, if this is it,
Yeah.
also great. Like,
It works
okay,
as a
this
spectacular.
works. This also works.
a great extended ending of that ending.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
in that conversation, we talked about how that film is a Hayao Miyazaki buffet as well.
Yeah, actually, that's
So-
a great point.
Yeah.
So very comparatively there.
So
for
you
sure.
heard it here, folks. Daniel Day-Lewis, the Hayao Miyazaki of acting.
Exactly. I'm going to make that into a t-shirt.
Oh, that's incredible. Worlds colliding.
Final way to make a design, JD, that puts Daniel Plainview like holding hands with Totoro or something like that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
That would be a fun t-shirt just to get weird looks from people. Be like, how? Like, what in the world? What is the connection there?
And then when you get film fans who know like who those characters
yeah.
are, they'll still be like, "What is the connection there?"
It'd be a great shirt to wear at the movies, right? In the theaters,
Sure.
because
Yeah.
surely you'd run into other cinephiles there that would have no clue what's going on.
No.
Good conversation starter, though.
Yeah, yeah.
Ask me about my
Absolutely.
T-shirt. I'll put that on the back.
Like too many questions might get annoying.
It could.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess as we wind down here, do you guys have any final thoughts on Anemone?
I do want to call out the cinematography once again. Let's give credit to Ben Fordsman, who shot this movie, and I do want to give him credit because he has such a great asset, which is this beautiful landscape, right? And I'm often a bit harder on cinematographers who have such a great landscape to work with, because so many times the land itself does all the heavy lifting for great cinematography.
That's fair. Yeah.
So like I feel like many times we might praise great cinematography just simply because it's capturing something beautiful in nature. But here I think he does a great job capturing it. And sometimes I think it's even harder for a great cinematographer to take something that's already beautiful and make the way the camera captures it an extension of that beauty, which I do think he does here. So I have to give him a lot of credit there for doing some great things and creative things there with what already is beautiful to look at. And this is a cinematographer that hasn't done much. He's apparently shot movies like Love Lies Bleeding,
Which is
Saint
gorgeous.
Maud. Yeah,
Which is
so,
gorgeous. Both are the cinematography in both is absolutely exquisite.
yeah. So clearly he has a knack for this, and does some really interesting things here once again.
Okay. Yeah. Megan?
I could not agree more. I love the cinematography. That might be my favorite component of this film, aside from Daniel Day-Lewis's really nuanced performance. I was thinking about it as we're talking, and I really found Sean Bean, and I know you said this earlier, Jade, but Sean Bean's performance is so great. And thinking about that character specifically and how he stepped up to become a father to Brian, to be a father figure, and then to reconcile his own feelings about his brother, and just there's so much restraint in that. And that is not something I typically see Sean Bean do. I feel like I normally see him very over the top, more, you know, aggressive,
He's a great loud
bombastic
actor.
Yes, exactly. And so to see him here so restrained is just very lovely. And I think the two of them play off of each other well. So I also have to say, I think our conversation has made me not only appreciate this film more, but like it more. And I said, oh, I love that. And I said I wanted to rewatch it. Now I really want to rewatch it and see how my perspective is a second.
That's awesome. See, these are my favorite conversations, when, especially, and it's easy. Maybe it's a little easier when you're fresh out of the theater,
Very
you
true.
know, just seeing it like you did. But I mean, again, I'm only 24 hours out of this, still wrestling with a lot of what this film is trying to do. But again, like as I've noted 1,000 times in this conversation, I was pretty blown away by the filmmaking here. I deeply love the cinematography as well. I echo everything you said, Brendan, about it. And I guess to emphasize the point a little bit further, it's not just the landscapes here. The landscapes are quite great, but it's the use of color, it's the framing and how how vivid much of the color is here. And maybe it's a little unfair. Maybe I should have lower expectations. I don't know. But when we get so much of the dull crap we get out of Hollywood and you see this, it's hard not to be blown away. But I do think the cinematography here is more than just the natural landscapes. It's the use of lighting, it's the use of color that makes so much of that natural beauty pop even more. For example, I think of that moment at the campfire near the end when you just get that establishing shot of the hillside and you get that blue hue just kind of raising over is incredible. And like there's a lot of shots like that that in the hands of another cinematographer or another director, especially through a Hollywood lens, you probably don't get that exactly. So I do think they take advantage of their setting extremely well. Again, the way they utilize fire here is also powerful given the emotional and thematic symbolism of the film that we've already talked about. So yeah, the cinematography, to me, this is easily one of the most beautiful looking movies of the year. Absolutely love it. And you couple that with these performances, I echo a lot what you're saying, Megan, about Sean Bean as well. Very good here. I do wonder how intimidated he was coming into this. Not only is he doing something that we don't know him to do in terms of that understated approach, but he's also going toe-to-toe with Daniel Day-Lewis. What do you think that phone call was like? Sure, I'd love to do your movie, Ronan. Who's playing Ray? Your dad? Oh no.
I kind of think he would I feel like he would have jumped at any opportunity to just say.
I'm sure he would have. I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I'm obviously being facetious, but I do love how committed he is to that performance as well. And I do think he's really great. He's very, very good here. He doesn't quite have the monologues that Daniel Day-Lewis does, but there are some great reactionary shots again where he's having to provoke his own stoicism and do something introspective in that stoicism. And I think he's able to do that very well. And as I noted in my opening thoughts, I love Samantha Morton here. It is one of my favorite supporting actresses of the year to this point, despite the limited screen time. I especially love that moment she has with Brian near the end. There's such an emotional complexity to it in just a handful of minutes there. That's really, really great. So, I'm a big fan of this. I'm a big fan of a filmmaker that's willing to take swings. I know earlier, Brendan, you talked about how this could be over-directed, and maybe it's just the state of things. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I am increasingly finding myself at a place where that I just don't put a lot of stock into that anymore.
That's more interesting to see now.
Yes. If a filmmaker wants to be ostentatious, be freaking ostentatious. I don't care. I just want to see films that are interested in doing something bold and doing something audacious, move the camera, bring vivid colors to the screen. It is a visual medium. Make it visually fascinating. I don't care how ostentatious it is. Over direct the shit out of it if you have to. I don't care. I'm all for it. That's kind of where I'm at these days. I don't know if I would have said the same thing 10 years ago, but I feel like I don't walk out of the theater as much anymore being enthralled visually as where the state of things were 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
So I'm totally like I loved it. I love the boldness. And again, I love the cogency. I think maybe that's also part of it for me as well in this particular case, Brendan, because I do think there's a lot of cogency to what he's doing. I don't think he overdoes it in the sense that like everything felt like it had a place. And the story was clear, the characters' actions were clear. There wasn't ambiguity where there didn't need to be ambiguity.
Sure.
And and I thought it was well handled tonally. So I loved it. I'm a big fan.
Cool.
Long live methodical cinema.
Yeah. I just have to say, Brendan, not Brendan, JD, you talking about it. And Brendan, you talked earlier about it being so painterly, and coming back to that, Ronan Day-Lewis is a painter, so it makes perfect sense. But also he's hearkening back to other filmmakers that infuse a painterly touch. Just did a rewatch of Night of the Hunter for having seen it multiple times, and that's so gorgeous and so painterly.
Incredible.
Right. And
movie.
Charles Lawton did that intentionally. And then Kelly Reichardt has done that with so many of her films, infusing
Good
painting.
point.
Yeah, like in First Cow. And so which is gorgeous. I love her work too.
So gorgeous.
So good. But but I love that Ronan Day-Lewis said that in the production notes, he wasn't sure if he could do a film, and through their writing, this did come out, and how he always loved the narrative of paintings, and now it's being translated into a painterly touch to this film. And I love that. And
Good point.
Yeah, I just think that that's great, that the visuals are just
I eat it up. I loved it. I totally loved it. And Daniel Day-Lewis, great to see you, buddy. I thought you were fantastic. Please,
good at his job.
Come back.
Good at his job.
Absolutely.
Maybe don't retire. Maybe if we give him another Oscar, he'll come back. Or maybe he'll go away for good. I don't know. Maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe we shouldn't.
At this point now, it's like as long as he wants to do it, then I'm happy.
That's true. That's the main thing. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's really been a lot of his career anyway. He wasn't afraid to take long stretches if he needed to. He just did the films he was passionate about.
The more he comes back, and the more we ask him to come back, and the more he's willing to listen, then we're going to get another 9 out of him.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's true. Yeah. All right. Well, with that said, if you agree or disagree with anything we had to say here, I am very much anticipating that a lot of people disagree with me, but that's fine. You can leave a comment below if you're watching on YouTube, or hit us up on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Megan, thanks for being here. Really appreciate you.
Thanks so much for having me. This was great. I always love chatting with you guys.
Yeah. Where can we find you on social media and your work online?
You can find me at Blue Sky and Twitter at Opinion World, or Instagram and Letterboxd at The Opinion S. I am at Spoiler Piece Theater every week. And I'm also here quite often at Women in Session. So, and also the Slashers podcast. There too.
Yeah, be sure to go and follow Megan. Check out all of her great work. We really do appreciate you, Megan. You're always fun to talk to. Love this as always. We have another podcast review coming as well. We are going to be talking about The Smashing Machine as we smash our computers all the way through that conversation. And
we're going to type with purpose on that one.
On the main show this week, we are talking about soundtracks, our top 5 soundtracks in film. Ooh. And I'm deeply excited to do this. We haven't recorded it yet. I have zero idea how I'm going to narrow this down to a top 5, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be a headache, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
It's going to be difficult. Yeah.
Stay tuned for all of that. With that said, thanks for listening, everybody. We will see you next time on the In Session Film Podcast.